This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Just because the presidency and Donald Trump, by extension, now enjoys absolute immunity or qualified immunity or conditional immunity or no immunity based on the Supreme Court decision, and I'll talk about how the waterfall falls into each of those buckets, does not mean that those that were co-conspirators with the person who enjoys some sort of immunity is also immune from prosecution and can move to dismiss their cases. Donald Trump participated, as alleged in the indictments, in Georgia, in the District of Columbia, in Mar-a-Lago, and in D.C., in a series of conspiracies that he was the hub. Think of it as a wheel with spokes, and the other co-conspirators are the other spokes along that hub, Donald Trump at the hub. Immunity, let's call it out for what it is. It doesn't mean you're not guilty. It doesn't mean that you didn't commit the criminal acts as indicted. It just means that there is a principle that has now been established by this MAGA Supreme Court that renders what you've done, even if criminal, even if you should be convicted, even if you committed those crimes, you are immune. It's like a pardon, the flip side of a pardon. You did the bad thing, but for other reasons, and what MAGA and the right wing like to call separation of powers doctrine, we're going to put the presidency, the Article II president, above the other branches of government in what was supposed to be a co-equal arrangement of a constitutional republic, where no branch was higher than the other, by giving the president absolute immunity for core duties, core presidential responsibilities as they appear in writing in the Constitution, giving them conditional or immunity, presumption of immunity for official conduct in the role of president qua president, and then no immunity for unofficial acts. They have put their fat fingers on the scales of justice and imbalanced the delicate balance of the founding fathers and the framers of our constitutional republic. Congress people don't enjoy immunity for official acts, at least right now they don't. Supreme Court justices don't enjoy immunity, at least right now they don't. And so right now you've got the scales, this three-level scale that was supposed to be legislative, judiciary, and executive branch out of whack. Now, having said that, you know the co-conspirators, Mike Roman, Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Ken Chesebro, and the list goes on. You know that they are going to argue, he's immune, I'm immune. He's immune, I'm immune. That is not how the immunity doctrine works, even with this MAGA right-wing Supreme Court. And so inevitably, invariably, when Mark Meadows and Jeffrey Clark, who the Supreme Court went out of its way, in their opinion, to say that the Jeffrey Clark-Donald Trump interaction, when Jeffrey Clark was trying to engage in a coup to overthrow the Department of Justice hierarchy and leadership, and allow Donald Trump to use the Department of Justice as a tool, as a weaponized tool to cling to power, that is immune. It's the only one they said is immune. The rest they sent back to Judge Chutkan to sort of sort it out. Although they suggested that the interaction between Donald Trump and Vice President Pence, the pressure campaign, would also, in their mind, enjoy immunity, but they're leaving it to Judge Chutkan to make the final decision. Because when they don't want to make a decision, they go, oh, well, we're the appellate court. We only make decisions on appeal as a reviewing court. We're not a trial court, except when they want to be, like in Jeff Clark. However, we know that Jeff Clark, former Department of Justice, number 4, who wants to be the Attorney General in a Trump-restored presidency. It's going to be a battle between the disbarred Rudy Giuliani and Jeff Clark, who's now been exonerated not because he got immunity, but because Donald Trump's interaction got immunity. They're all going to file. Mark Meadows is going to file motion to dismiss based on the ruling, U.S. versus Trump, Trump versus U.S., that just came out by the Supreme Court. And now with the trial courts, the district courts are going to have to decide is how do you extend immunity? I can tell you that there is no doctrine, at least at present, a constitutional doctrine that allows immunity granted to a certain type or a certain position in our government, a certain constitutional officer in our government to be extended to somebody else. So even though Donald Trump is going to get some sort of immunity for much of what is in the indictment that remains in the District of Columbia, we'll leave Mar-a-Lago aside for a moment. We'll leave New York aside for a moment. We'll do some other hot takes in midweek edition of Legal AF on that one. But there is going to be, out of the 45-page indictment in District of Columbia, surviving prosecutable wrongful criminal conduct as alleged overt acts and crimes, without a doubt. Whether Judge Chutkin, and I did a separate hot take on this, is able to hold that evidentiary hearing she's going to need to hold, a mini trial, and get this case up and running, even if it straddles Election Day and the inauguration, I think she's the judge to do it. Now, what about immunity extension? That's not a thing. The Supreme Court said that their separation of powers doctrine requires that the executive branch be above the law for official conduct and for core presidential function as expressed literally in the U.S. Constitution. That does not mean that co-conspirators who did the exact same thing enjoy it by extension. A lot of them argued, well, he had executive privilege, so I've got executive privilege. Privilege is different than immunity. Privilege is different than immunity as a doctrine. Privilege says there has to be basically two parties to a privilege, right? Whether it's an attorney and a client, whether it's the president and somebody who works with him in the executive branch, there has to be a, to paraphrase Justice Kavanaugh, what's it to me? What's the connection to me? There has to be connective tissue between the office, the person holding the privilege, because the person holds the privilege. The attorney-client privilege, the client holds the privilege. The executive privilege, the president holds the privilege, and the other third party. Immunity does not have any connective tissue. You get immunity. You. It's like a perverse Oprah Winfrey show. You get a car, but not the other person. Not the person that you were in the conspiracy with. There's plenty of examples in the law where somebody is not exonerated. That sounds like they got away with the crime. They're given immunity because of some doctrine, in this case, separation of powers. That doesn't mean the person that robbed the bank with them, that tried to overthrow democracy with them, is going to get, by extension, immunity. Immunity doesn't extend. It has very short arms. It doesn't reach out to grab and embrace all the other co-conspirators. I'm looking at you, Jeff Clark, Mark Meadows, Ken Chesbro, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, Rudy Giuliani, and the rest, and Mike Roman. Heart health and staying healthy, especially when you have a family that you want to be able to spend as much time with as possible, is so, so important. We could all benefit from heart-healthy energy. One of the best ways to get some? By supporting your blood pressure and circulation. Super Beets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure. They're plant-based and stimulant-free, so you get a green boost without the jitters. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. Super Beets Heart Chews are incredibly delicious and so much better than any alternative supplements out there. I take my Super Beets Heart Chews each morning, and it's really kick-started my morning routine. After taking my Super Beets Heart Chews, I feel like I have more energy and I'm ready to take on the day. Super Beets is the #1 doctor, pharmacist, and cardiologist recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support. It's blood pressure support you can trust. Super Beets Heart Chews support healthy circulation, so you not only get blood pressure support, you also get productive heart-healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and a free full-size bag of turmeric chews valued at $25 by going to legalafbeats.com. Get this exclusive offer only at legalafbeats.com. Those people, oftentimes, I'll give you an example in the world of prosecution. Somebody gets a plea deal. They get it. This is the equivalent of the immunity. The Department of Justice or the prosecutor decides to give a cooperating witness who participated in the crime, no matter how heinous. They give them immunity. They give them a plea deal. They won't prosecute them. That doesn't mean that the other people in the co-conspiracy who committed the crime, committed the murder, tried to murder democracy in this case, are going to be able to say, but wait a minute, he got a deal. Where's my deal? You don't get a deal. There's the Supreme Court has announced that there is a constitutional principle founded on separation of powers that's more important to them than what it appears to everybody else, which is they've now created a king who the next Donald Trump or this version of Donald Trump 2.0, right? This is like the Fast and Furious movies. Donald Trump, Fast and Furious 2, following the blueprint of what's in this decision by Justice Roberts, writing for the majority 6-3 of the court. We see it as, oh my God, look at the constitutional principle they've just established for our children, for our grandchildren. Donald Trump sees it as a playbook, as a to-do list, as a owner's manual of what he can do next. But that doesn't let the others off the hook. The purpose of my hot take is to say all is not lost, right? Yeah, it was a sucker punch to the solar plexus of democracy. We got to get off the mat now. We got to get off the canvas with our gloves up and see how we navigate a path to preserve our constitutional democracy. It was very similar to the sucker punch and the solar plexus punch to our democracy and civil liberties and women's rights that happened in the Dobbs decision, which also was in late June or early July 2 years ago, which ripped away an enshrined constitutional right for a woman to choose that had been in the Constitution as announced by the Supreme Court for over 50 years. The Roe versus Wade right to choose and to make a decision about bodily autonomy and a right to an abortion. And we said, how are we ever going to survive? And how will this republic survive? Well, I think it's motivated people, women and people who support women, to go to the polls in large numbers and make sure this never happens again, to go to their state polls, to put on their state ballots laws that enshrine a right to choose for a woman and reproductive rights for a woman. Same thing here. This isn't just about Donald Trump. This is about how imbalanced now our constitutional republic is as a result of this decision. The Supreme Court just severed the relationship that holds, I almost said Donald Trump alone, holds the presidency with a capital P responsible and accountable to the people. There's no recognition of that. This Supreme Court is so upside down and has their head up their collective backsides that they can't see what the ramifications are going to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now in the hands of somebody not named Donald Trump, but heaven forbid worse, who, as I said, sees this decision as a permission slip, as an owner's manual, as a to-do list for how to cling to power and do worse while in office with impunity. Figure it out later, right? Ask for forgiveness, not permission. Just do it and hope it sorts out with this new precedent of Trump versus United States. That wasn't the message that the court, the Berger court and the Warren court during the Nixon era sent about the criminality of a president in office. You know, the right-wing MAGA like to talk about, and the ones on Supreme Court like Clarence Thomas like to talk about, the first time in 200 years we have the prosecution of a former president. Right, it's the first time in 200 years we've had a criminal president that refused to leave. Even Nixon didn't do that. And running for office again. So I wanted to make it clear the difference between immunity and privilege, and to equate immunity given to Donald Trump by this Supreme Court from absolute to conditional to no privilege, depending upon the act. That will be decided by a trial judge, in this case, for now, Judge Chutkan, and future district court judges in the future. I wanted to contrast that and compare it to a plea deal. It's very similar to a plea deal. Just because one co-conspirator got a plea deal and is therefore immune and immunized doesn't mean the others are. Same thing with pardons. It's very similar to pardons. That a president pardons one person of a multi-party conspiracy or crime doesn't mean the others are pardoned. Doesn't mean the others enjoy being pardoned or can point to the pardon as grounds for them to have their claims dismissed. So I want to call out the decision by the United States Supreme Court for what it is. And it's dystopic on its surface, but I want to talk about what are the dominoes that will now fall and what ones won't fall so that we can keep clear. There's going to be moments of confusion. I don't see the Trump versus U.S. decision on immunity helping Donald Trump in the New York case, yet he filed a motion related to it in the New York case in advance of sentencing. You're going to see the Mark Meadows of the world and the Jeffrey Clarks of the world and others say, he was immune, I'm immune, or some version of that. And I wanted to make it clear up front with this hot take so you can hold on to it as you are buffeted by some of this competing and often false information out there. We'll continue to follow it and analyze it the only way we know how and the only place we do it on Legal AF on the MeidasTouch network. It's on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time and then on every major audio podcast platform. We curate the top 4 or 5 stories at the intersection of law and politics. We bring it to you the only way we know how, unfiltered, right? Unvarnished, sometimes unhinged, right here. As a wake-up call where we sit at the intersection of law and politics as lawyers talking about things that we know what we're talking about at that intersection. How refreshing. So if you like what we're doing, leave me a thumbs up here and a comment. It helps with the algorithm, keeps us on the air, helps us build our network together. No outside investors. We're building it with our bare hands and with your bare hands helping. We really appreciate it. We are the network you've been looking for and that you're helping to build. It's like an ultimate do-it-yourself network. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.